Alright, so if you've seen my DCEU rankings, you know that the Shazam movie is my favorite DCEU movie. That's the one that always comes in at first place. So I was super excited for this one. I couldn't wait to see how the story continued, because when I left the first movie, if you've seen the first movie, you know that all of Shazam's siblings become Shazam superheroes themselves. And when I left the theater, I went, I'm excited to see how this continues in the sequel. I can't wait to see how they end up becoming a superhero family and how the story continues with that. So did it live up to those expectations? Kind of. And like I said, the main thing I enjoyed here is seeing the Shazam family work together to defeat the villains. It's their dynamic. That makes the film fun. Because even though when they're superheroes, they look like adults, they still have youthful personalities. And they're inexperienced because they're teenagers, they're children. They haven't been superheroes for very long. So they fight crime and do all these heroic things with the best of intentions, but it doesn't always yield the best results. Sometimes they end up causing more problems than they ended up solving, even though they had best intentions. That provides a lot of humor during those sequences and how people kind of receive them, even if they're not perfect superheroes compared to like Superman or the other ones. So that provides a lot of humor with that. That was my big problem with Incredibles 2, was that it didn't expand the family dynamic. It just became an elastigirl spin-off movie. This is somewhat closer to what I was hoping Incredibles 2 would be, a family of superheroes fighting crime and working together. And I also love how the Greek mythology aspect was greatly expanded in this film. The first film briefly touched on the Greek mythology roots, because every letter of Shazam is a different Greek god, right? Like Hercules or Zeus, right? That's kind of all they really touched on in the first one. But this one goes very deep into it, as the title Fury of the Gods implies. This feels like a modern Greek epic, and it's fantastic. There's also a lot of really smart humor in this film, even more so than the first one. And I actually think the jokes in this one worked a lot better and were a lot sharper. One of the best jokes, not spoiling the entire joke, the setup basically is there's this magic quill that writes whatever you tell it to, but it also writes whatever you tell it to. So even if you're not talking to the quill, if it's in the middle of writing something for you and you decide to have a side conversation with somebody else while you're telling it what to write, it writes what you're writing in the side conversation, which provides a lot of humor, a lot of hilarious. That was probably the best joke in the movie. So, and also the villains in this movie, they're also a lot more interesting and threatening, which makes the film have bigger stakes. Like the first villain, let's be honest, his motivations, he was just syndrome again. He's I was burned by somebody a long time ago, so I'm a villain. Okay, we've seen that before. The villains in this one are like actual Greek mythology villains, and they're a lot more threatening, they're a lot darker, and also the tone in this one is a lot stronger. I think the first one had a few tone issues, because we have things like lighthearted kitty humor, and then we have like demons biting people's heads off, throwing them out the window. So I think the tone in this one was pretty straightforward. There weren't a lot of tone shifts. It kept more or less the same tone throughout, which is another reason this film is slightly stronger. But I do have a few issues with the film, though. Mainly, there's a big plot hole in this movie, because when the kids turn into Shazams, they all look different. They all look like adults, except for the oldest sibling, who is an adult, because she looks exactly the same as she does when she is not a superhero. And her parents, who see all of these Shazam superheroes on the news, are like, these superheroes are very good. What? These are the people protecting us. They don't recognize her? Like, they don't recognize her when she's a superhero? And there's no explanation for this. Like, even a quick little joke about, well, nobody recognizes Superman when he wears glasses is the same logic. That would have worked, but they don't explain this at all. Even a quick little joke explanation would have been better than nothing, and they give us nothing, so it's a huge plot hole as a result. But yeah, like I said, the film, lots of fun action sequences, tons of great humor. I just don't feel like the story in this one was as strong. Like I said, I like how they expanded on the idea of the family being superheroes, and I do think the villains were better. But I don't feel like the character journey for Billy was as moving or strong in the first film. I think they probably could have done something a little bit stronger with this one, a little bit more moving. It's still a fun comic book movie, but it doesn't do anything particularly unique. It doesn't really subvert expectations. But if you like live-action Saturday morning cartoons, which is essentially what this is, you'll enjoy this. But if you're someone who's feeling the superhero fatigue, this is probably not a film for you. You can probably wait to rent it. But for everyone else, if you love superheroes, you're a diehard superhero fan, and you never get tired of them, it's a great time. You'll have a lot of fun with it. So overall, I would say Shazam! Fury of the Gods for me gets a B, 8 out of 10, and a 4 out of 5 stars.